Anonymous. Well, you're exactly who I need to talk to. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you wonderfully.
Okay, so yeah, I got you on speakerphone, and well, I wanted to tell you the story of the trout. So I'm Debbie's recording this, so just for prosperity, I'm talking to Neil Gladden because he understands more about trout fishing than anybody I've ever met in my life. So,
You flatter me greatly there, buddy.
okay. So, the story starts off. This is about day 4 in our trip. I had floated a couple of days before, and this I guess was the first morning. Yeah, this is Saturday morning after I had floated for 2 days, and so with guides. So now I'm just going to explore the local river out front. So are you familiar with the ledges on the Watauga River?
Yes, I've fished through there before, but I can't say that I'm that tuned in on it. No.
Okay. Well, that's where we were. We were staying at a place that had access to the ledges. Okay. And there is a little island that I guess you call it a braid. I don't know if it's really a braid. There's a little braid that goes, it divides the island from the mainland. You know what I'm talking about? Just a little skinny water.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Okay, so there's a pretty little braid through there, and the river there. At the time, it was early in the morning. It's only about 15 feet wide. It's like a 2-lane highway wide, and about 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep, a little bit of channel. So, and the flow is like, about a foot a second. I drop my fly in and it move about a foot a second. Does that make sense? Can you kind of picture that?
I follow you. Yes, sir.
I got trees all around, up and down and in front of me, behind me. So anyway, I get out there and I've got a Chubby Chernobyl that I tied. Yep. And I put a little nymph below it. I had about a 2.5 foot dropper fly beneath it, a little holy grail fly that I had tied. And the whole time, so this is day 4, never saw a fish hit top water at all. The whole time. Nobody caught anything top water, nothing hit top water. So I'm fully expecting to drift my little midge or my little nymph down under this little Chubby Chernobyl dry fly. And, if I catch anything, catch it on a nymph,
Right.
So I get in the water and I'm only about a foot from the shore. It's slick as heck. It's those black ledges. It's not gravelly stuff. It's black ledges, and I'm about a foot from the shore. And I just tossed my little chubby out because I remember you told me long ago, fish the close water first. So that's what I'm thinking. So I tossed my little chubby upstream right in front of me, and it just drifted down 4 or 5 feet down. And I realized I didn't have enough floating on it. So I dig in my bag. Now I've got my backpack on, so I take my backpack off. Because I'm just saying this is skinny water. I don't need it. I put it on the shore, but I got a walking stick and a net. And I've got my 9-foot Orvis Recon, okay, my little 4-weight, all right. So I dab a little floating on there, and my next cast is kind of midstream, upstream, in the middle of the water, and it's got a good little drift. It goes down a little bit, 15 feet or so, but I like that opposite side bank. So I had nothing there. So my third cast, okay, so Neil, my third cast is perfect. It's upstream about 5 feet from the other bank, and it's following this nice little line of bubbles, and it's just flowing pretty good, and it moves within about a foot of the shoreline on the other side, downstream about probably 15 yards or so. And all of a sudden, like, something came up. I was expecting my chubby to go underneath, thinking something's going to hit the nymph, but something came up on top and just slurped that thing down, okay? And it was a big swirl, And I didn't see the fish, but it was a big swirl, and I set the hook, and I thought, you know what? This is a pretty good fish right here. Okay, so I got my rod up high, and he takes off downstream, and I'm thinking to myself, I got all day long. I do not need to rush this fish. I mean, this was right off the bat. This is right third cast, 8:30 in the morning, something like this, early in the morning, and I got all day. So I'm battling this fish for, I promise you, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I am not moving. The fish is going back and forth. I know it's a big fish, but I'm starting to think I got a carp. You know, I'm like, I hadn't even seen this fish. I'm thinking I must have a carp. And so I'm making a little headway with him, but I'm being really careful. And this is the first time I ever got a fish on the reel. I usually do it all by, hand lining the kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about. But I got him on my reel so I could use my drag and all that. And he's moving downstream, and now there's some rapids and stuff that I didn't want him to get into about 50 feet or so downstream. So I'm trying to keep him on my side of that. And I still hadn't seen the thing, all right? And then all of a sudden, I get him about 20 feet away from me. Still hadn't seen him. But he has buried his nose. I thought I was hung up because all of a sudden he wasn't moving. And I don't know what was happening. I picture that he had buried his nose under one of those ledges.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what he was doing, but I couldn't move it. And I thought I got hung, or that little nymph that I was fishing on had gotten hung, because that fish was midstream and I could not move him. It wasn't going anywhere. So I got my walking stick there, right? And I'm easing down and slipping, and even though I got proper gear and all that, I'm just slippery as heck. And I'm easing down, trying to keep my line tight on him, rod up high, and I get lateral to him, and he's still in the middle of the water. I still hadn't seen this fish. He's in the middle of the water, and when I got sideways to him, he took off. He took off to the side and downstream. So I still had him on. So I'm convinced, you know more about it than me. Do they like bury their nose in a rock or something? What are they doing?
He didn't get that big being stupid. He'll stick that snout under a ledge, like you said, or they'll go to wood piles, and
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I feel convinced that that's what he was doing. So he gets away, and he goes off downstream a little bit. Now, I swear to you, I promise, at this point, it's been 20 minutes. I promise you, I'm not kidding you. I was trying to be conscious of the time. All this, I'm thinking, take your time. Still hadn't seen the fish, and I'm like, man, I'm doing everything perfect. I mean, I'm doing everything right here. And I check, I got my net, I got all that. All of a sudden, the fish came up on top of the water. And you know how a catfish rolls on top of the water when you get them close to the boat?
Yeah.
That is what this fish started doing. He was tossing and turning and rolling on top of the water like a catfish. And that's when I first saw him, and I was like, oh my, that's a pretty good fish. That's a pretty good fish. And then I started thinking, nobody's going to believe this unless I catch this fish, unless I get this fish and get a picture of it. So I'm bringing him, and I'm working him and getting him closer. And I got my net out, and I got my rod in my left hand. I'm reaching it with my net. I'm thinking everything. He's six. I've got my my line's all the way to the reel. I just got leader out. You know what I'm saying? My line's just about all the way into my reel. So I got him close, and I'm stretching and reaching for him, and snap, pop, crack. And I literally heard myself out loud, because I'm being quiet. I literally said, "You have freaking got to be kidding me!" Okay, my rod broke about an inch below where it connects to that next section, in the butt section. okay? And so the end, that part of the rod just flew down the line right at the fish. And so now I'm standing there with a broken rod in one hand, a net in the other, and a fish still on, and my rod tip in the water, right? And I'm like, I fell back to when this had happened to me at the pier once before. I had a rod break. So I reached down and I was.
Wait a minute. Make sure I understand. You had a 9-foot rod.
Yes.
But now you've got 8 inches of rod, and the fish has 8 foot 4 inches.
No,
Is that right?
honestly, actually, close, very close. I had 2 foot of rod in my left hand.
Okay.
And 2 foot minus 1 inch, and the fish had the rest of it. Okay. So I let go of the net. Now the net, all my perfect stuff is now out the window. Okay. My net, which I had in my hand, is now hanging off my little tethered thing, floating downstream. I dropped the butt end, my reel, and grabbed the end of the fly rod and the line. So now I'm hand lining with 6 foot of rod in my hand, the broken 6 foot, and hand line while my reel and the butt end is downstream in the water about 6 feet away. And the fish is still on. And I'm also aware that my walking stick is tethered to me and it's flailing around every which way too. So I'm like, this is no longer perfect, you know? And so I now realize it's been 20 something minutes, but I'm thinking maybe somebody's still at the house. And so I literally yell, Siri, call Rusty. Siri. I got my phone in my pocket, right? So I literally, Siri, call John. Siri, call Brian. Siri, call Jet. And nothing happened. Okay, Siri did not come on to help me because I'm thinking, God, you know, I need a net buddy. Somebody come down here and help me. And I'm like, them boys ain't at the house no more. I've been down here 25, 30 minutes. They were fixing to go right behind me. There's nobody there. So Siri didn't help me. All right. So now I'm back realizing I'm on my own. So I'm hand lining. I'm pulling in the line. I'm getting the fish closer. I reach with my net and the fish actually goes in my net, but it is just like a freaking basketball thing, in and out of the net. Okay. The fish is in the net, gets out of the net, and I'm standing there a foot from the shore, and literally the fish swims between my legs downstream. I mean, I literally am looking at it go between my knees. Okay, I'm knee deep in the water, and the fish. And now, as I'm looking, I realize that my fly line has wrapped around the studs. I have these discs on the bottom of my wading shoes. And it has literally wrapped around the stud. And I know that if that fish ever gets to that point, it's gone, right? There's nothing I can do. So now I'm in now or never. And when I saw the fly line wrapped around the studs on my boots, I literally heard myself again say, you have got to freaking be kidding me. Okay? So now I am literally on my knees in the creek, hand lining the fish. Okay? Again, it's about 1.5 foot of water. Hand lining, and I'm like, if I can get him to the net, okay? And sure enough, I got him to the net. And when I got him to the net, Neil, I dropped everything but the net. And I just virtually lunged forward and grabbed the net under the feet, but underneath the wooden, and just literally grabbed the net and swung him onto the bank. And there we were. I was a freaking mess. I was tangled up, line everywhere, net, fish. And I look, and that thank goodness. I don't know how that fish did not get up. Actually, the Chubby Chernobyl was buried in his tongue. He was hooked, great, but the fish had teeth. I reached in his mouth to get that thing out, and literally bit my hand to pieces. Okay, it bleeding. I mean, I was cut and bleeding, and then now the next thing I can think of is I've got to keep this fish alive, and I've got to get a picture. And I have usually I use my rod for a reference, but my freaking rod is broken, and it's half of it's. I looked, and I swear I could see my rod, the end of my rod, vibrating in the water. My reel was out of sight somewhere down under the water, and line everywhere, and crap everywhere. But I got the fish, and I thought, well, I don't know how big my net is, but I'll take a picture of it next to the net, and then I'll measure the net later and have a reference. So that, my friend, is my story that I just wanted to share with you. And knowing how much you could appreciate something like that, but feeling everything was perfect, right? Until everything wasn't.
Well, that's the fish of a lifetime. That was brown trout.
Yeah, he was 23 and a half inches long, because my net was 24. So I'm hoping he was, but I had no idea until afterwards how big my net was. But he was big. I got a picture, and yeah, he measured it. And 2 days before, I had caught my personal best with Justin floating a 21.
I saw that.
A 21 and something, but like that same trip. So anyway,
thing about catching a fish, a big brown like that while you're waiting, is it makes it double difficult to get him to the net, and then you break your rod, and it becomes, from a fish of a lifetime, it's a fish of several lifetimes.
Yeah, it's quite a fish of a lifetime, fish story of a lifetime for sure. So I appreciate you sitting here in on Debbie recording this for me, because one day I'll be old and senile, and she'll pull this out and say, this is something you accomplished once before you became old and senile. So
I'll tell you, that's great story. I'm glad it happened to you, but I knew it was going to happen to you eventually, because you go after them, and you stay after them, and you notice things when you're out there, like that little braid of water.
Yeah,
a lot of people walk by that kind of water.
Yeah, well, I tell you, that was a pretty special spot.
Yeah.
And I just had good luck. Next day I went back with John and caught about a 16-incher. So it was a good little spot. So anyway, that's my fish story. Shane and Debbie were encouraging me to tell the story and let them put it on video. So I appreciate you being part of that.
And, well, thanks, man. Appreciate that. And congratulations again.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sitting in. And you got to tell Kathy, hey, you guys have a good rest of the evening, all right?
We'll do that. Say hey to all yours, and next time buy yourself a good rod.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to do that. Well, either that or just keep buy cheap ones since I mistreat the hell out of them.
Those breakable ones.
There you go. All right.
Man.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.